Edge against jungle for sure.
I think
Yeah, you'll have an edge against jungle. He hasn't played much. You didn't even take someone that's maybe kind of good at heads up. Like, he's specifically good at this. Of all things. Anyway.
Too funny. And then she goes, I don't have an edge against jungle. I love that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Thanks for the pep talk. She's like,
good.
Like that meme when it's, what's his name? Jonah Hill.
Oh,
No. Dude,
I love that meme. It's really, really good. Welcome, everybody, to another Game of Gold recap podcast where we go over everything that took place this time in episode 6 of the new reality poker show, Game of Gold, that has captured the interest of the poker world. Obviously, make sure that you've watched all of the episodes up to this point so we don't spoil all the fun for you. Boys, going back to the end of episode 5, we left off on a cliffhanger in round 1 of the Heads Up Challenge where Yo Viral jams on the flop on Olga with a flush draw, and she's forced to fold middle pair no kicker, and he goes on to win the match for a clean sweep of Team Nikita, who will now be bumped down to the losers bracket to see who goes home as the second group to go home. So, Yo Viral, he's swept the other team. He goes back to his sweat room thinking, woohoo, it's going to be high fives and all kinds of congratulations. And Jungle is not a happy man when he walks in the door. Kind of is. She's like, "Yay, way to go. And he's just livid. He didn't realize how valuable it would be for him to go first. And maybe she thinks that he should have obviously gone first in the first match. But the weird, and Yo Viral, he wins again. He sweeps the other team. So he wins 90 coins, which is a huge amount of coins in this format when it's an individual type thing. And the part that confused me, guys, and I want to get your take on this, but they agreed that Yo Viral would go first in the first match and Jungle would go first in the second match. So I'm not understanding why Jungle's so mad here, given that he has the opportunity to run the table in the next match. He's just mad because Yo Viral sweeped and says he felt manipulated. And
that's not why I'm mad.
It's just so weird. Like, I'm trying to figure out how in the world he could be mad in this spot, or is he just kind of losing his mind from lack of sleep?
I think it's a few things. I think he's more mad at himself. So this is a thing that people often do, of course, is you let yourself get talked into a decision, and then you're kicking yourself all the way through it, and then the worst case scenario for that thing happens. It's a little bit results oriented, right? If Yo goes out there, he loses round 1, Jungle comes in, I don't think he's mad about it. It's just he let himself get talked into a negative EV decision, and then the worst possible result, happened at least for him. It's not really the worst possible result because the team moves on. We'll talk about that. But so that's he knows that's 90 points that he's not going to get at all. But I do think to some extent you're right, Adam, is that he's going to get the opportunity to get 90 in the next round. It's just that Yo Viral now has such a commanding lead. He was already the leader in coins going into round 1, and then he scoops the 90. So but I love the whole scene. I loved everything about it. Like the three of their personalities clashing. Like Yo comes in expecting to get the high fives, like you said, kind of doing it, and then Jungle just brooding and swearing and just being like, just shut up, kind of being like bringing Midwestern mom energy to this, being like, let's be nice, everybody, and then trying to calm him down and just making it worse. Jungle just being like a toddler to Kaina's mom. Like everything was gold, if you'll forgive the pun, about this scene.
Yeah, you know what it reminds me of? It's like what you described is so true, because it's like when it happens, it pisses you off. When you make the deal, you're like, oh, whatever. But then when you just holy smokes, man. So that's when it really stings again. It reminds me of years ago, Vanessa Selps offered Jason Mercier, like they were drinking or something. She drunkenly said, I'll give you 1,000 to 1 that you can't win 3 bracelets in the summer or something like that. And Jason says, okay. It's like, whatever. So what? She's got an extra free 10K because that's what they bet, right? Except Jason wins back-to-back bracelets. All of a sudden, she's like, that ain't fair. You took advantage of me when I was drunk or whatever like this, right? So it reminds me of the Jungle situation of it just all dawned on him, right? that he felt manipulated. And like, you know, in his side interview, he said correctly, he's like, I'm the best player. But I think he misses something because he's being very selfish and self-focused as well. He's like, I'm the best player. I should go first. Why? If you're the best player, the fact that you go at all is good for the team, right? If you think it's like, you know, there is no EV difference for the team where you go first, you go second, you go third. In fact, to save the bacon of the team, you're the best guy to go last, right? From an individual perspective, it's, you know, we know going first is the nuts. Now, I think his pushback is like, well, I went first in the second one, and he assumes maybe, which I think is kind of silly, that the second one will be tougher. I don't know if we're clear on how many coins are available for the second one. I don't remember.
I think it's still 30-30. Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess he's assuming that, you know, he's just going to play a tougher player, but that's not necessarily true. So, I mean, it's like from Yovaral's perspective, him saying really got Jungle when he says sacrificing EV. It's like, shut the fuck up with that. Like, you're not like doing this like godly thing for us. Yeah. And then kind of just like sweet as she can be, tries to be nice. Like, yeah, I know. It sucks that, you know, we don't get to play. And she's like, that's not why. And I think you're right, Terrence, when you say that, like, and he says it himself. He's like mad at himself. And then he dives into his book, which happens to be a fucking philosophy book on how to stay calm. You can't script this stuff. It's reality TV at its best.
And kind of totally calling him out, not in front of him, but in the interview, she's like, he's an arrogant and baby, and he's pissing me off. And I'm coming on board to Team Kinda here. She's fun to watch.
Well, she tells it like it is, right? She called him arrogant, so he's being a baby. That's what we saw. That's real. You know, I think she's come off really, really well, you know, throughout. I think she's like the breakout star, if you will, regardless of the poker, just as far as her personality goes in the game.
So it turns out, Nikita, again, Team Nikita gets swept. So they're going into the loser's bracket. Team Yoviral is going to move on to the winner's bracket. And Yoviral picking Nikita's team to go against pays off, right? I mean, you know, they swept, or Yoviral swept them. So good selection there. We now cut to the new matchup, which is Team Feder against Team Charlie. And
Team
you get
Fedor.
Okay,
just stem the tide of YouTube comments.
Yeah, because everyone
can't say Fedor.
He can't say Fedor.
We had a player in Vancouver called Fedorov, and it's been stuck in my head.
We have Fedor on, and I'm just going to have you talk to him. All right.
Team Fedor versus Team Charlie. You get the sense that Fedor's team, that he, you know, he's the sensei, imparting knowledge on his pupils, and they're eager to listen, take notes. Well, they agree to just let Fedor play first. Yeah, off you go. There you go. And then it's funny though, right? Because when Fedor leaves the room, Josh turns and he's like, hang on a second here. I think we should be flipping a coin tomorrow to see who goes first. He's going third tomorrow, and we're going to flip a coin to go first. So he kind of realizes that as Fedor. Maybe he did while Fedor was in the room, but he didn't say anything until he left. So I thought that was interesting.
It seems like they're slowly dawning on the fact that, oh, wait, like, yes, we're in teams, but we still have to look out for number one. There's only going to be one of us at the end. And you know, like I said in previous shows, like these guys, for the most part, aren't reality TV veterans necessarily. I mean, Maria's been on Amazing Race, and you know, David's been on some, but they're thinking as poker and maximizing EV, and I think to them, you know, getting to be part of a team, it's such a novel experience because as poker players, if you've been a poker player for 25 years, you've only ever really cared about your own results. And sure, you might back your friends and stuff like that, but that's not the same as playing as a team. And they're so almost caught up in the moment of like being a team. You saw Josh when he got picked, you know, when he fell in the draft to Fedor and Maria. Fuck, you're doing it to me, Fedor and Maria. When he fell to Fedor and Maria's team, he was so excited because he knew he was on the strongest team and he was happy to be on the team with them. And then, like at some point, light bulb goes off. Say, wait, I'm also playing for $456,000. I guess I should probably advocate a little bit for myself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Terrence. It's like I think with Maria and Josh, I feel like they were just happy to be picked by Fedor, right? Because he's like one of the, you know, he's an end boss. He's like he's the guy. So they just sort of automatically took subservient roles. And, you know, we sort of talked about the hierarchy and this sort of thing. And like, there was absolutely no pushback whatsoever. Fedor gave them the game plan. Fedor gave them the notes. He taught them some tricks heads up. He said they were good students. He is the master sensei. Master sensei says he goes first. Students say yes. Students say yes. Master sensei leaves the room and they're like, wait a minute. Hold on. Wait, Shit, what if he wins all three? I guess we go through, so that's the benefit. But at
Which
the same
just
time,
happened, and they all watched it happen with Yo
Exactly.
Viral winning all three. Like, it can definitely happen. Yeah.
that like seeing Yo Viral do that should wake the other teams up that are going next. You're like, holy smokes, like that can really happen. And the other now he's just so way in, far in front, so you have to be cognizant of that. But I really think you're right in the sense that like they're both happy to be picked. There was no battle of the pecking order here, right? Like in some teams, you might have, let's say, I don't know whether it's Charlie, David, and Andy Stacks, like these guys all might think like, I think I'm the best. I think, it's a little more it's a little more blurry there. With this one, it's like, no, it's Fedor. We bow to Fedor. You're the guy, and we'll do what you say, kind of thing. And that's in this game. And I think in season 2 and going forward, people are going to start to be more cognizant of that and be like, no, they're going to fight for themselves in these spots.
And all through this episode, you see Fedor with like this little bit of a smirk on his face, like he almost realized he got away with it. And we're going to see the interaction between Charlie and Fedor later, where it's sort of like,
because that was interesting to me. I'll let you take the lead on that.
Yeah.
So then we hard cut to Charlie's sweat room, Team Charlie's sweat room, to see how they're going to decide the order. And predictably, Team Charlie, they're going to choose the Kumbaya method of doing a PLO flip to see who goes first, which is hilarious.
Right? It's just, Charlie realizes what Daniel just says. Like, you've got 3 successful poker players in the room. They're all going to think they're good. Charlie's basically saying like, hey, I'm not going to pretend you guys are dumb, and I'm not going to act like I can con you into letting me go first and trying to negotiate. Let's just do the fair thing. And that's going to win him like, leadership points, empathy points, fairness points. He understands everybody's got the same, he says it himself, everybody's incentives are, they're not aligned. They're not lined up with each other. So let's do it the poker way. It's a flip. I love that move from Charlie. You mentioned Kaina, Daniel, being the breakout star of the show. I thought Charlie was clearly the star of this episode. So I'm glad you picked him to interview this week.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Charlie, again, wins the flip, and he sits down to play Fedor and immediately asks Fedor how they chose the order. Charlie's trying to shit disturb here, right? Like he's trying to stir the pot. And he asks him how they picked the order, and Fedor kind of is a little bit uncomfortable and is like, doesn't really want to say, and says something about the EV being the same. And Charlie's like, what? No, it isn't. And Fedor says it's not a big deal. Is it at all, Terrence?
Oh, dude, hold on, let me go first on this one because I'm sorry, Jared, because like Fedor, it's almost like Fedor knows, right? He knows he got a good spot here, and Charlie's completely blowing up his spot, right? It's like it's like antagonistic to do that. It's almost accusatory, and it was like kind of uncomfortable a little bit because it's obvious Fedor's like, shut the fuck up, let's move on and play poker, right? Let's not go there. And Charlie's like, and Charlie's making it's a huge EV difference, and Fedor downplays like, not that big a deal. Fedor knows it was a pretty big deal. I mean, okay, it's not the be all end all most important thing, but there's no question, nobody can debate it's not best going first. So it was really interesting to see, like, Charlie play that psychological warfare game, right off the bat with Fedor too.
It was great. Fedor looks so smug and talks about how it's not a big deal, but I did do the math. I did the math. I got a spreadsheet.
Nice. Yeah.
I did the spreadsheet. So let's assume every player in the entire field is equal. It's a 50-50. You are 50-50 against everybody. It's 50-50 all the way through. There's no skill advantage at all. What is the EV difference in coins between going first and last? Adam, your guess? How many coins of difference?
Oh, in one match? Or
no. Well, it's a thing, right? Because you're going to go first.
Okay.
I just say Adam, you're 1. Daniel's 2, I'm 3. What's the difference between you and me and EV? How many coins?
So going first, I'm if everybody's equal, 15 coins it's worth to go first. And if I win, it's another 7.5. Is 26, but that can't be right because I'm sure I've forgotten something. But I'm going to say,
so just throw it out there. You're going to take
26.
It's 26 coins more to go first.
Yeah. But I think I've forgotten to subtract off the amount of coins if you go second that you could win. So it's probably something like 14. I'm going to go 14.
Daniel, what do you think the difference is?
Well, so it's your first versus third?
Yeah. So if your first is worth some number, third is worth some number, what's the difference?
I was going to initially say like 15 to 20, but I think it's probably more than 20. It's probably like 23-ish in that neighborhood.
So it's actually only 6.
What?
And it's wild. I'll show you the math later. I'll get the screenshot and I'll have Ross throw it up there. And if I did the math wrong, somebody can show me. But yeah, it's actually not that much. The likelihood of what you'll get.
Yeah, like you make a good point if they're all even, but of course, they're not all even. In terms of like, okay, if Fedor goes first, he's a crusher, so he's worth
different.
more.
It's very different. Yeah. So if you're 60-40 favorite, the difference is actually 13 coins. So it's still large, but it's probably less than everybody thinks intuitively. And I was surprised. I was like, oh, right. And then when I looked at the numbers in front of me, yeah, like you basically, you only 1 out of 8 times do you get the 90 coins. 1 out of 8 over 90 is, 11, right? So and half the time you just lose right off the bat. You get 0 coins anyway. So, a quarter of the time you get 7.5 coins. And another eighth of the time you get 60 coins. So if you add that all up, it's only...
If you go first, what is the average coins that you will get?
26 and a quarter.
26 and a quarter. Okay, got it.
Yeah. And if you go last, you get on average 20. You get on average 20 coins. The thing about it is if you're the third player, you don't get to play 24% of the time. You don't get to play at all. So you get your EV user. But 76% of the time, you have the same EV as the first player. Right? So it's not that much. So if the EV of the first player is 26, so 76% of the time, you realize the same equity that the first guy had. If your team's a 60-40 favorite, obviously it's a lot more. The difference is more. Charlie said that he didn't really think that anybody was probably more than like a 54. I don't remember what he said, like 54, 55, 56% edge in the field. You can see that the structure's the structure's deep at the beginning, but it's not super fast. And everybody's good, right? Like, there's clear favorites and there's clear weaker players. But I would say I would never lay like 2-1 on anybody against anybody, I think, in this format. Would you?
No, quite. Yeah. 58% seems like the high end, but you could be a favorite.
Yeah. So it's funny if you were really quick with math and you just knew this immediately, you could be on a team and say, you know what, Daniel, you know what, you're our best player. I'll let you go first, but you got to give me 15 points. You got to give me 15 coins. Then Daniel, actually, if you haven't done the math, you probably think that's a pretty good deal.
I didn't know you could do that, but I'd like because
maybe you can, but imagine if you could, right?
I think you maybe can because that's actually an interesting wrinkle that I never thought of, which is like, all right, I'll go first, but I'm going to pay you guys, 2 coins each to do that. That would have been a nice, that was cool. I don't know if that's a thing. I'm curious. I'm going to find out
because you guys and I also overestimated probably the difference in EV of going first versus going third. So yeah.
All right, back to the Fedor against Charlie match. And early on, Fedor gets a lot of value with A6 when he makes 2 pair against Charlie, who makes a hero call with just a 6. You can see Charlie really trying to get a read on the river there, but Fedor gives him nothing, of course, as Fedor's not going to do anything. And even after the match, I think Charlie says something about, I can say this now, you are so intimidating to play against, and you can see it, I think. Charlie fights back, gets some thin value of his own with ace high on a double paired board. Fedor pays them off with king high. And then there's a bunch of editing where there's a whole bunch of hands. And this might be the first time, I think, maybe one other time, but this is the first time in a match where instead of just skipping to the next interesting hands, they play a bunch of hands. They get to the turn river. It's pretty fast, some music over the top. I like this a lot because we see the progression of the match a little bit more rather than just jumping from level 1 to level 3. Thoughts, Terrence, on how they edited this here?
I liked it because we did get to see sort of the flow of a lot more hands. I've always said this with respect to Poker TV. I always think there should be a little thing. Some streams do this, a little like text in the corner that tells you kind of the action on the previous street if you're just picking up an action on the river. But I liked it to get that through the flow. This isn't a hardcore strategy type of show, and they're going to show us the strategically more interesting hands. Like, there's this hand where, Charlie has pocket aces and Fedor has, or it's the other way around. Fedor has pocket aces and Charlie just has king high, and you see Fedor bet and Charlie fold. And that's not really strategically interesting. It's not super exciting. That's just how you play aces, but we got to show it. Otherwise it doesn't make sense when we see like, hey, wait, Fedor had this many chips before and now he has this many chips. So I sort of I liked going through that and seeing them really quickly.
Yeah. For me, so I grew up in the 80s, right? I grew up on the Rocky movies, the Karate Kid, all those. One of the things all those movies had in common were the montage scenes over music. Dun, 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 dun. You see him pounding beef, you see him doing push-ups, this whole thing, and that's kind of what the vibe felt like to me. This sort of montage of the back and forth, the punches, and the music getting you pumped up. And I think, like you brought up a good point too, Terrence, is that what you can essentially do is fit in more hands without all the sort of mundane action. Okay, he raised pre, he called, check flop, bet flop, call, turn, check. You just sort of get to see more of it, where you see a snapshot of what happened. Like, and none of those hands were like really all that interesting or impactful. Otherwise, they would have made the cut. But it's a one way where you can sort of add more hands and more poker without being, without it being tedious or stuff, and actually being fun. It has that vibe. Like, as I'm watching it, listening to the music, it's like, it's kind of like they're punching, they're throwing jabs. Like, all right, boom. Oh, he gets him. Oh, boom, he gets him back. Boom, 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 boom. It really is like that. I mean, I think they did a great job. Everything they did with this show. And again, this is only season 1, so you can only imagine what season 2 will look like in terms of pushing the envelope. This was like sort of a test case thing. And I think they crushed it. Like every little thing they added, this included. I think, I imagine other organizers or whatever are going to copy that method because it's just such a winner, right? So let's say you only have time for a certain number of hands in a show. Well, you can put 4 or 5 more, boom, boom. And like you said, Terrence, in shows in the past, you'd watch and they'd edit it. And you're like, one guy had a 2-1 chip lead. And then it's like, you come back to the very next hand and it's even in chips. And you're like, well, how the fuck did that happen? Right? Yeah. And this sort of gives you a glimpse behind the scenes of what actually happened.
Adam, what was my walk-up music when I fought?
You're the best.
Yeah, theme song from the Karate Kid.
Yeah. Charlie finally wins the match with Ace-6 against King-Queen, and he stays on to face the next member of the team, of Fedor's team. He faces Maria Ho next. The very first hand of the match, literally hand 1 of this match. It's crazy. Charlie picks up King-Queen. And Maria has Queen 4, and the board runs out with 2 queens. But of course, the king kicker plays, and they get to the river.
Queen 9, 5, 6 queen. For those.
And Maria has Queen 4, I believe, against King Queen. So she's it's a fascinating hand on a whole bunch of levels. They get to the river. Charlie shoves, and Maria's thinking, and she gets down on her time. By the way, I love the time clock in big, huge numbers right in the middle of the frame. It's fantastic because we can see how close it gets, and it runs down, and she uses 2 coins. This time, by the way, Terrence, it's 2 coins to get a 30 seconds. It's not 1 coin. She fires 2 coins in, gets a 30-second time extension, and she starts prodding Charlie for information. And Charlie, in genius fashion, starts talking as much as he can to either confuse her or not give her a chance to think and be quiet because, she asked for some information. So he continues to talk. And then all of a sudden the dealer's like, your hand's dead, Maria. You've timed out. And she throws her hand away. And then they start the next hand. And she's like, okay, I forgot that I had to put coins in to actually get another extension. She was going to do another extension. And she also said she would have called. She was going to call most likely, but she was going to do another extension. However, this saves the match for her and the team because if she calls, she's dead on hand 1, which is amazing.
And saves her 2 coins.
And she saves the 2 extra coins. Thoughts on that whole sequence, Terrence? That was pretty fascinating.
Yeah. It felt to me like she was looking for a reason not to call and just not quite finding one. I do think she was going to call. I think if this was a spot where, the timed chips automatically just came off her stack and you forced her to say something, otherwise she was going to do something, I think she was going to call. If you just look at the way this hand plays, like how do you get away from 3 queens heads up on an uncoordinated board? Charlie, it's got these Jack 10s and King Jacks and all these kinds of things. Like he's going to be capable of finding enough bluffs there. You have a queen in your hand. You're basically only losing to like full houses, ace, king, queen, king. It's really hard to fold to that spot. More importantly, and I thought about this is, sure, it's a 120% pot size bet on the river, so it's a huge bet. It definitely, you're only supposed to call with the tippity top, but you are at the tippity top of your range here. But what more than that, the psychological element I think here is nobody would ever blame you for making this call. And you've got 2 teammates in the back. And what are people so often scared of? We've talked about this for 6 episodes now of this show. People are often scared of doing silly things in front of their teammates, embarrassing their team, letting down their team. This is clearly a spot where nobody's going to say, Maria, you donked it off. Like, what were you thinking? Like, just because nobody would ever blame you to call queens. As soon as that river card comes down, everybody in the room thinks she's going broke. Everybody in both rooms, right? Both sweat rooms say, this is over. It's just a question of whether, Charlie's team, they thought he should check, let her bet, and then raise all in. I actually liked his play. I thought open shoving made a lot more sense. Because when you have a queen yourself, it just feels like how are you extracting value from you? We know you can't extract value from a 9 or really any other pair. So you have to hope Maria bombs it off with a missed bluff to be able to get value. What have we been saying all along? Maria doesn't bluff. So if Maria doesn't bluff, you just have to target her hero call. And so I like the play that he did. I thought Maria was going to call. I think if she did not accidentally time out, that she would have called.
Yeah, it seemed like she was headed that way, but like you said, didn't really want to. I think there's something that a lot of people don't know that I wanted to explain to people. We play with shot clocks all the time in the high rollers. It's very common now, right? The difference is they're automatic when we play in typical high rollers. Maria plays in these and she knows that. So this environment is different where you have to make this decision on your own. It isn't automatic, which means Charlie talking, you thinking, you also looking at the clock. You're not prompted. You're not saying, 3 seconds, 5 seconds. So you have to sort of be really cognizant of a few other things about whether to use this chip. So as it turns out, probably the fact that she's played other high rollers and just made a goofy, essentially a mistake here because she wanted more time. There's no question about it. And it's saved by the bell. Like Charlie did everything he could to get her to make a mistake, but unfortunately it backfired on him.
Yeah, she distracted him. And I actually think if he had just shut up throughout this river, I think she pays it off. I think it's actually a bit of that was the mistake that he made is he talked too much. He gave her a reason not to call. Now, obviously, that's easy for me to say. I can see that Maria has a queen, but I do think that if he just set all in, put his head down, started meditating.
In theory, I think you can fold her hand for overbet. I think you can. I think you can fold it because, when you say there's not that many bluffs that he can credibly have here, right? And he has to be very concerned when she calls twice that she has a queen. She could have a straight as well, on the turn, slow played or whatever. So he's really just gambling that, for him to be bluffing there, he's gambling she doesn't have a queen. And he might not do that with all of his bluffs, for all of it. But again, that's, neither here nor there.
Yeah, Maria has no hearts in her hand either. But.
Yeah.
Some thoughts here, guys, because there's a couple of references to how painful it is to watch Maria play. And I think Charlie even says something yeah, well, when I'm in the match, it didn't really, because I was thinking about different things, but now sitting here, it's painful. I think David Williams is yeah, it's brutal, that kind of thing. And they included those in the cut, a few of them. Thoughts on that, Terrence?
Yeah, I loved it. Obviously, that's not in reference to this spot. This is obviously a huge spot. That's not, she can take all the time in the world on a spot like this.
Yes.
But what they were referring to is pre-flop. And, David was even saying, watching her pre-flop was, quote, fucking brutal is what he actually said. And I love to see that cut in the back. You guys have heard me rail on and on about how No Limit these days is too slow. Even with the shot clock, these guys felt that as a viewer, it was too slow because, yeah, you get 60 seconds. There's a 60-second clock for every decision. But if some guy just 2.2x's it on the button or 2x's it on the button, you shouldn't take 60 seconds to respond to that. You should have some sort of pre-programmed strategy. All this stuff, you shouldn't take 60 seconds to check on an auto check board. I love Maria, but I did like to see them calling her out on that.
So I just want to be clear of that because I think just to be clear so the viewers understand what we're saying here. When we say painful, we're not oh my God, she's playing pre-flop terribly. You're just saying in terms of how much time
too slowly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Maria now basically free rolling, right? She should have gone or could have easily gone broke in that first hand. And she gets cool.
Fader says it. She says, Fader says something like she's doing 700,000 better than you or I would right now. I love that. She's got 700,000 left.
And not only that, she gets coolered right away again. She calls I raise with 6-4. Charlie has ace queen. It comes 6-3 deuce, I believe. Check, queen on the turn. Charlie has ace queen, queen on the river, and Maria ends up paying her off. Just brutal again. Maybe if the queen doesn't come on the river, she might be able to get away. Who knows? But and then it looks like Charlie has her on the ropes after that. She's all in with King Jack against Charlie's Ace 10. One card to come, and she's got 6 outs, and boom, Jack rolls off on the river to double up close to $1 million of the $4 million in play she gets up to here. Some more play happens. She doubles again. This time Ace King holds against Queen Jack suited and gets her even closer to even. And then all in once again, Maria doubles with Ace 4 against Queen Jack. Now she's running good in the all-ins. Forces Charlie into some meditation. He does something that he obviously does. There's some thing that he does, and he goes, "I've never done that on TV before," or something, which was interesting with his hands, and who knows what's happening there.
I was expecting he does that deep singing thing. He puts it on social media sometimes. I was expecting some deep chants, man.
The poker gods do not listen to the praying, and Maria completes the comeback winner. Ace deuce suited holds against the 10 Jack, and I think they were playing 100,000, 200,000 at that point. It was like 8 big blinds or 7 big blinds or something that he shoved with Jack. Just automatic stuff that they couldn't really get away from. Daniel, you had a chance to catch up with Charlie, so why don't we run that now?
All right, so very happy to have Charlie on the show. We've had a wide variety of guests, but there is no other Charlie Carrel. Thanks for being here, Charlie. Appreciate it.
Hey, DNegs. I love you.
Love you too. All right, so let's get right into it, shall we? I mean, this last episode, we saw a twist, right? Where, you have to sort of choose who goes first. And we saw how the other rooms handled it, and, they all had discussions about it. But you took a very different approach. You sort of went with the kumbaya, like, let's all be fair and equitable. And I'm just curious, like, as captain, what compelled you to go that route rather than fight for, going first?
I want to first say, as the teaser might suggest, the kumbaya is only temporary unless there's an upheaval in the ranks. But when I look at this, it's just a logical spot. And I'd like to get your perspective on it as well, because JungleMan, I was literally on Twitter or X like 10 minutes ago, just like, he's saying he's 100% right and it's 100% not what I think. From my perspective, incentives aren't aligned. Everyone has the incentive to go first because the chance of moonshotting it win-win-win is just so big, and it's such high EV. It happens one out of 8 times you just go win-win-win, 1 out of 4 times you go win-win. Like, everybody obviously wants to go first. And the edge that somebody's going to get from having their best player first is just like pretty insignificant. So incentives aren't aligned. So the only fair thing is to randomize. The 2 options that I think logically you have in that spot are manipulate your team or don't and randomize. And I didn't feel like manipulating my team. I thought that was like, okay, well, first of all, I don't know how that matches with my ethics. So it's like a little bit off the table. I can get why people might. But also, it would create a weird environment where the other 2 would probably feel, oh, okay, Charlie's trying to manipulate us, and I feel like the team dynamic would mess up. So I think as a leader in that spot, the only correct answer is to randomize.
Yeah, so it's interesting. You do that, right? You randomize based on what you come to, and then I found this a little interesting. You sat with Fedor, who's your first opponent, of course, and it was a little uncomfortable right off the bat, where you it almost had like an accusatory tone. It's like, well, how did you guys decide? And, Fedor says, well, they let me play. And you're like, oh, man, you sort of took advantage of him in that spot. And kind of like, then you have, of course, the discussion about the EV, you claiming, it's a huge difference. And Fedor's like, nah, come on. It's almost like Shader's like, shut the fuck up, Charlie. You're blowing up my game.
Yeah, Mr. Shady Fady. No, it was actually an intentional tactic from my perspective there. I made the decision before he answered, because I thought there was a good chance he would have done that, and I just wanted to kind of create a little bit of dissonance within their ranks, and that felt within the ethics of the game.
So it sounds to me like, you really are playing the mind games, because then in your next match, I was like, I saw you do this, and I'm like, he did this for a reason. He's calculated in what he's doing. You sit with Maria, and right off the bat, you let her know that you spent a solid hour studying, right? So I'm curious, like, why tell her that? Was that some sort of degree of intimidation, or, like, what was the that just ran?
That was a lie.
That was a lie. Okay, on purpose?
Yeah, I felt like I had a really distinct psychological strategy going into it, and I think people really underestimate this because when psychology influences one's game, poker's full of gray areas, and when somebody's in that gray area, the psychology really comes in. And if it's not a clear-cut decision mathematically or theoretically, this is where stuff really happens. With Fedor, I thought I was just going to go for a cold hard, don't really talk to him approach. I don't think the cameras really pick up on it, but he and I barely shared a word until the game was over. With Maria, I had the instant strategy. I'm just going to be as talkative as possible. I thought she was a very affable person. And I thought that she was going to be the kind of person that wouldn't be able to turn down a conversation, even in the middle of a hand. And as you know, of one of the OGs of live tells and live reads, if you can get somebody outside of their robotic self within a hand, that's where, it's a smorgasbord of tells.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because the very first hand you play against Maria is this absolutely sick cooler where you both make trip queens, and it's actually her that starts the dialogue, right? She gets you talking, and then it looks like it's going to be over in hand one. And of course, she forgets to throw in the gold coin. Do you think if she had more time, she's going to pay that off?
I don't know, man. It seems like the gods really blessed her that day.
Yeah, no kidding. Yes. It seemed like there was a point where she doubled up like 4 or 5 times, and you're doing your thing where you close your eyes. I don't know if you're praying to the poker gods, whatever. Josh in the back room sort of thinks that a lot of the time you're doing that, you close your eyes. He thinks you're counting the pot size and how many big blinds and how much to bet. Any truth to that, or what are you doing when you're in that place?
Yeah, it depends. Actually, on that day, a little bit of an inside scoop. And for a lot of the rest of the show, I was just a little bit off energetically. I'm a big fan of flow state. I'm a big fan of trying to find that balance point where you don't really need to think and you just have this dance between your intellect and your intuition. I was jet lagged, and the Korean food there was a little bit dicey for me. My little sensitive tummy. And I was just doing a lot of meditation to try and find flow state. But also I will, if I need to count the pot odds, work out the pot size, and then work out range analysis. I'll close my eyes and just get rid of distractions. And sometimes one of my spiritual teachers, she once said something just off the cuff. It's I see better with my eyes closed. And I was like, oh, that's pretty funny. And she didn't mean to make it funny, but it's completely true in some circumstances. If you can get rid of outside distractions, having black in front of you instead of shit moving it can be easier to think.
It makes me think of from Queen's Gambit. I don't know if you were familiar with Queen's Gambit, the show, but the little girl, she's looking up at the ceiling and she's seeing it in pictures. Do you find when you have your eye closed and you're basically crunching numbers, do you feel like you see them visually as shapes or numbers, or is it just digging deep?
Some people will have more of that kind of intuition where they'll see things, or even some people hear things. I'm in the world of spirituality, they call it claircognizance. I feel things really deeply, and I used to always go on these rants when I was coaching poker. It's the energy between something like defending king 7 off and defending king 8 off. Each one of those hands and each one of these situations has its own energy. The energy of king 8 off and king 9 off is completely different. And so the way that I'll think about poker is I'll feel the energy of the hand, I'll feel the energy of the spot, and it will just kind of fit into place. And I think a lot of people do this without really realizing. I don't think this is particularly unique thing.
There is one name that comes to mind who describes what you're describing without actually understanding the intellect behind it, and it's Bryn Kenny, of all people. Bryn Kenny often talks about he often talks about feeling the energy of the situation. He just feels it. He can't pinpoint what he saw, but his subconscious is dialed in, and so he feels it. So what's interesting to me about this show a little bit, and you touch on it in one of the interviews, it feels a little bit to some degree like a social experiment, with poker players who are individualistic, to a certain degree. And you even say at one point you underestimated, how much emotion played a role, and you were surprised that, it affects other people the way that it does.
Yeah, I guess it's very easy to look at the veil of masculine rationality that poker players like to put forward and forget that they're emotional human beings underneath. Seeing Jungle, I didn't know Jungle and was it Yo Viral were going at it behind the scenes. Seeing that, I'm whoa, there's actually zero part of me that would ever do that. I just wouldn't be able to take it that seriously. So I did underestimate how much this was going to cause dissonance within the ranks, and I really yeah, I saluted many times off the cameras the person that ran it. I think it was a really, really good read situation.
I figure you're like the perfect guy to sort of ask this, but it feels to me like, I mean, obviously reality shows do this, but like, it feels like a function of take the distractions away, take your cell phones away, force you to sit in a room with other people. And then you start to see some of that authentic, energy show up, and for you, that seems like a practice that, you do often with meditation and different things like that, where you're comfortable in those environments, or maybe others just lose it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Okay, so when they were interviewing me for this TV show, all I heard, they were like, the main guy, all I can tell is that he thought he's going to be able to break some of you. And I was so excited because I didn't think it was even going to be poker. I literally thought they were just going to get a bunch of high rollers, sit them in a room for like 3 days, no entertainment, no nothing, just silence basically. And I was like so ready to do that kind of stuff, because for me that's just a normal weekend. It's like so sometimes you got to practice silence. So I really thought there was going to be more of like the psychological and less of the poker. But yeah, given that it was poker, I think he crushed it. I think it's a fantastic thing. Apparently people don't know what to do with themselves. And I heard, I've been watching this podcast, by the way, I heard you speak about how you asked Yoa whether people forget that the cameras are on. I think that is 100% correct. I think people forget, and after like an hour of being in there, you're not thinking, oh, I need to perform, I need to do this. It's like, okay, I'm a human again. I need to tell this guy I think he's wrong. Whatever comes out.
So you were a part of the show, right? And obviously now you're seeing some stuff that you didn't see. For me, I was eliminated early, and now I'm simply a fan. And I didn't have this on my question list, but I'm curious your take. I've found Kaina to be very endearing, and I feel like she relates to a lot of people who were chosen last on the playground. And I feel like she's done a remarkable job of coming off relatable, authentic, and, really being a team player, but fighting for herself. I'm curious, looking back now that you see some of this stuff, your thoughts on, Kaina in general in terms of how she's come off.
Yeah, she's a beautiful human being. She's a sensitive soul. And I think that it's kind of a little bit of a shame that the air of the poker community is that we take somebody that's very well accomplished within poker, put them amongst people who are, probably going to be more accomplished in poker. And suddenly, because of the relativistic aspect of the human psyche, we're like, oh, she's the worst. Whereas like 99, I'm going to say this directly to anybody that's listening to me right now. You'll know if it doesn't apply to you, but the vast majority of this applies to you. She's better than you at poker. She's way better than you at poker. I don't care if she peeled king 9 off, cut off versus button, happens to the best of us. She's got the instincts. And in terms of personality, I think I relate to her in some sense that, back in my day, beginning of my YouTube career and then onwards, you've seen some of this come out. I've been attacked by the online poker world, and it causes these defenses to come up in you because it triggers stuff from childhood, blah, 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 whatever. And you then don't get to see like the best version of yourself. And almost when the cameras are on, if you're not aligned psychologically, emotionally, you could say spiritually, then it's going to be tough to be the best version of yourself because you're thinking, oh, what are they going to think about this? What are they going to say about this? And people really underestimate how painful that shit can be. Like I 4 years ago, I would have rather been kicked in the nutsack than have somebody make a video about me on YouTube. It was that painful. And I think people really, really underestimate how much just leaving a shitty negative comment can ruin somebody's day.
How old are you now, Charlie?
30.
Okay, so I'm going to just give you my take on my own life. I'm just going to share this. In my 20s, I definitely cared what people thought, right? Definitely in my 20s. In my 30s, I sort of pretended like I didn't care as much as I thought, but I still cared to a certain degree. I can honestly say that in my 40s, thankfully, I have my dream wife. I've got the life that I wanted. I give zero fucks anymore, right? And it allows you to be in, your authentic self. And I feel like we all sort of go through that, and we lie to ourselves when we say we don't care at all. Because even when I say that, facetiously to some degree, I still care a little bit, And I think like for Kaina, being as like you said, established or whatever, the thing that we have to remember, which you eloquently pointed out, is you can be the 6th best poker player in the world, in the entire world, out of billions of people. But if you sit with the other 5 every day, you're essentially, you're it, And I think like what I loved about the show is that it kind of forces this on. It forces people to sort of deal with this stuff. And I commend her personally. I mean, it seems like you do as well.
Yeah, no, I spent a lot of time with all of these people off the camera, and she was just lovely. So there's no two ways about it. And also for Robin, like people are coming so hard on Robin, and it's just like, can you not just fucking enjoy it? Sorry for swearing, etc. But can you not you cunts.
Yes, there you go. You're allowed.
Can you not just
English, right?
enjoy? Okay, can you not just enjoy a show without having to weigh in like it's fucking Big Brother? Like, there's so many, even of the high stakes community. I'm gonna call out JMO because I love it. JMO just being like, I don't want to say who's shit, but it's somebody, and it's like, dude, it's not Big Brother, man. We're playing poker. We don't need to vote on who's like the whatever. We don't need to say who's the best, who's the worst.
Take it or leave it. That's kind of the world we live in now, where this is what people want to see. Like, they want to be delved into the drama. They watch these reality shows and they have opinions on who's good, who's bad, and sort of, this is the first opportunity, I think. And tell me if you agree or not. Like, years ago, poker sort of showcased personalities, and they did so a different way with packages and stuff. And then we create these like one table streams and, rinse, repeat, right? Feels to me like this is an opportunity for people to see people when essentially the cameras are on, but they're kind of off. And I think that allows people to pick their favorites a little bit more. And that's just what you're going to see with social media. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of love it, honestly, as much I give people a hard time for, being drudgery and negativity. I love the fact that people are weighing in on poker. It's been an interesting one for me where episode 1, I just got so much hate. And then episode 2, everyone's like, oh, Charlie ain't that bad, actually. And it's an interesting, like, meditative practice where I don't want to be affected by the hate. And if I do, I'll go into meditation and just like feel into it and feel why. And then I also don't want to be affected by flattery. Like, if somebody posts like, Charlie's my favorite person now, I don't want to be the kind of person that then has an inflated ego from that. And you get to really like watch yourself as people give their unwavering, undying opinions on you.
Yeah, well, listen, I've been enjoying watching you. Maybe not so much. I saw a few of the comments about, the shoes and socks off, picking your toes. I don't know. Some people push back on that, saying, Charlie, you've crossed it too far. I don't know.
I didn't see the comments. I guess I should think about that. I got bare feet right now. I'm always like massaging my. To me, here's my thing. I think you guys, every one of you, you're all conditioned to fuck, and me too, to some extent. But I think the fact that everyone dresses relatively similar, has their hair in certain ways, and sits in certain ways, I think in 1,000 years we'll have a different culture. They'll look back and be like, oh, that's kind of weird. Everyone just did that, and nobody had like the individualistic stuff. I can't really say that about you, to be honest. Too much than DNegs, you're kind of your own character. But like the average person that they'll see like they'll see a guy barefoot and they'll be like, whoa, that's weird because my culture says it's fucking weird. Well, you know what? 2,000 years ago, if they saw you having shoes on that squished your feet together and your toes together, they'd be like, well, that's unhealthy for your feet, you idiot. It's sometimes such a shock to me that people respond so much to other stuff.
Well, it's how we're conditioned, right? And not to derail the conversation into ethics of food, but like you see a lot of people in the US while they're eating a burger and fries and like some chicken wings going like, oh my God, Asians eat dogs. How disgusting are those people? Right? In reality, it's like, it's you get repulsed by it. So people seeing you in your natural habitat, take your shoes and soft sock, and start touching your feet. People are like, that's not okay. Because it's, again, a cultural thing. But I'm glad you're on the show. You've been a breath of fresh air. I think they did a great job of bringing different characters. And without you, Charlie, season 1 wouldn't be season 1. I want to thank you for joining us here for a few minutes. We're going to keep on watching, see how you fight through and navigate and do so from the place of Zen. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
All right. So Maria gets the win for Team Fedor. Charlie is out of the way now. Next up for Maria from Charlie's team is going to be Andy Stacks. I think she says something about, I can't remember exactly how it went.
But I want Taiwanese violence. So they're not going to be able to show this episode in China.
Right. Nice. The show ends in the middle of the match. There isn't a really big cliffhanger here, but I think she's whittled away maybe 400,000 from Andy, and Charlie and David seem a little bit disappointed in Andy's play. He's got the pillow over the head. He's like, oh gosh, what are we doing here, Andy, kind of thing. And interesting, right? David's like, every bet that Maria makes means what it says, right? And he Maria's cards are face up is basically what he's saying in this spot. Even after sort of an amazing comeback from, how many other players win that match that Maria just won? Not many. I mean, I think she's probably one of the only ones that folds that hand and then goes on to win it. So maybe a little bit of disrespect there. I don't know. It's a lot
of disrespect, if you ask me. I mean, if you take somebody who's been successful at poker for whatever 15 years or however long Maria's been playing, at the highest level, and basically say she's face up, like she just always has it when she bets and she never bluffs. Like, I think that is a bit disrespectful. I find it hard to believe. I mean, like, I don't think it's actually true. What people really mean, I think, when they say that, is that she's under bluffing certain spots. That they're not finding the right bluffs in that situation. Or Fedor actually probably says it most accurately, is like, when there's a close decision between the passive thing and the aggressive thing, she generally chooses the passive thing, and that's the way to, I think, look at this hand. Look at these hands. So there were basically two hands that Andy and Maria played together. The first is Andy flopping top pair, and then Maria hits her gin card on the turn, makes aces up, check raises him, and Andy's at a decision. Well, against most people, I think the theory says you're probably supposed to call with second pair and a good kicker here. But the idea is like, oh, Andy, we talked about this. She just never bluffs. And I don't think it's true that she never bluffs here, that she can never find a bluff, because you're just not a successful pro poker player at the highest level if you just have zero bluffs in your range there. So I didn't hate the way that Andy paid off the turn there, ends up getting away cheap, not having to face a bet, check on the river. I do think he missed a barrel on the last draw. I think I was really surprised. I thought the episode was actually going to end on that cliffhanger of him deciding whether or not to bet the river when he bricks out everything. He's got the 8-5 and it's like 6-6-3 queen jack, and he's barreled flop, he's barreled turn. He's supposed to do his job. You can't leave your children out there. You're supposed to barrel the river. I thought that was going to be the cliffhanger, but they just showed him checking it back and his team being super disappointed to him in him. Daniela, what are your thoughts on those two hands?
I was going to say, like, so obviously, you hear sort of the like behind the curtain view of what they think of how Maria plays, but like for me, what was interesting here is like you can sense the emotions are running high, right? Yeah. Like everyone realizes it's hot. Like they were giving it to Andy pretty good, right? Yeah. What the fuck? We just told you she doesn't bluff this spot. What are you doing? Especially because honestly, of the hands that he's supposed to call with, Queen 10 is not the greatest, because I think we had the Queen of Hearts. I don't know if there was hearts there, but I know that a Queen blocks Queen Jack and Queen 9 and some bluffs. But anyway, it's not a great spot to bet call there, but he chose to do it, and it seems like it went exactly against what they talked about. And they really start to rail on Andy, and now, of course, Andy's turn bet. Andy bets 90K. David's like, "What the fuck? 180 would have worked here." Fedor's like, "Oh no, don't worry, he'll follow through on the river. He's gonna bet. David's like, "I don't know." In the back rooms, like, and he dogs it, right? So one of the things about this hand is like when you bet half pot on turn, you leave a whole bunch of hands in that Maria can have. Right. And on the river, you have nothing and you unblock everything. You don't really block stuff. I mean, the 5 maybe interacts a little bit with some 4-5 stuff, but whatever. Point is like you cannot win with a check. And you've sort of told the story that you have something here. So if anything, like I guess he was just afraid that Maria was trapping. But like, I mean, really, what is a trap here? She's going to flop 3 6s? Because like a jack, even a jack is in a tough spot. She doesn't have a queen. Right? It's like, what hand calls a queen? I mean, in theory, she could, king, queen, or whatever, but doesn't really have that. So he dogged it there. And, we talked about this earlier, Terrence, you said it. It's like a little bit of the pressure of having guys behind you. You're like, I don't want to bluff it off. Right? Yeah. Even though I think if it was his own money, I don't think Andy's going to miss that bet.
I agree. He's played in enough high stakes spots, but not.
He had David yelling into a pillow. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm losing his fucking mind.
All right, boys, that's going to do it for episode 6. For the recap for that episode, thanks for joining us. Thanks to everybody out there. Thanks to Charlie for joining us. And we will see you on Friday to recap episode 7.